खबरां दा लेखा जोखा जून 19-2025।
BC education system in crisis as critical staffing shortages lead to band-aid solutions, BCTF. For parents and students in British Columbia, it may feel like things are going from bad to worse as a province-wide staffing crunch in classroom hampers the education system. Klein Johnston, president of the BC Teachers Federation, says he doesn't have exact numbers of how many positions need to be filled, but confirms the situation has hit a desperate crisis level affecting elementary, middle, and high schools. We hear it all the time, and I'm sure parents can tell you well that their children have uncertified teachers in classes. We know our members lose their prep time and they get shuffled around the school so they can cover gaps. It's a critical shortage for sure. And the shortage doesn't just apply to teachers but to education assistants as well. There's not enough fully certified teachers in every classroom. There are not enough EAs in every classroom, and that makes the work of both of those groups more difficult because we work together, asserted Johnston. He admits some districts are leaning on parents to pick up the slack. Investing more money into the public education system is one obvious solution, but being able to poach educators from that other parts of the country appears to no longer be an option, says Johnston. It's a crisis across the country which has an impact because traditionally we have drawn educators and workers from other provinces and territories to BC. But now that they are depleted and people have more choice and can stay home and get the job they want, it's having that pile on impact. Johnston feels the onus and on the Ministry of Education to fix this. The fact we are in a crisis means they should be looking at working through the summer to figure out solutions. We would certainly be happy to sit down at any table, attend any meeting that's going to help our members get more support in the classroom and help students have what they need to learn. Johnston is also hopeful that more specialist roles can be filled. Francophone educators, there are not enough of those for children who are in French immersion. My daughter right now is getting taught half French immersion science in English. Despite all these shortcomings, Johnston maintains the quality of education in BC is high because those who are in the system, he says, are working to keep things on track. But at the same time, you can easily find parents whose children may be the ones that need a little extra support, which is what they are supposed to get, and that is lacking, he said. He's hoping the province rolls out a big announcement over the summer to support a strategy to improve the system, but Johnston says he is also realistic. Honestly, my gut says that classrooms will look unfortunately very similar in the fall. I don't see anything on the horizon that's really going to provide that much needed significant improvement.
BC ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਪ੍ਰਣਾਲੀ ਦੇ ਮੰਦੇ ਹਾਲ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕਹਾਣੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਗੁੜ-ਗੁੜ ਕੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਮੇਨ ਕਾਰਨ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪੜਾਉਣ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ कमी आ वो वड्डी मात्रा दे विच है। इसका खुलासा जिहड़ा BCTF ने कीता कि जिहड़े टीचर्स ने उन्हां दी कमी, टीचर असिस्टेंट्स ने जिहड़े उन्हां दी जिहड़ी वडेरी मात्रा दे विच कमी है और वडेरी वसों दे होण दे कारण बहुत सारी दफा जिहड़े टीचर्स ने उन्हां नूं एक थां तो दूसरी थां दूसरी क्लास दे विच जाण दी कहंदे शफलिंग दे विच प्रैपरेशन जिहड़ा टाइम है वो नहीं मिलदा। और उन्होंने ये भी दसिया कि एजुकेशन सिस्टम नूं इस वक्त सूबा सरकार वालों वडेरी मात्रा की जरूरत है। और जदों उन्होंने इस गल नूं भी नुकते नूं भी स्पष्ट किया कि इस स्कूल बंद होने तो उपरंत जदों फिर पतझड़ की रुत दे विच स्कूल खुलने ने उन्होंने कोई बहुती ज़्यादा उम्मीद तो है नहीं कि इस दे विच कोई बदलाव आएगा, पर उन्हों का कहना है कि सिस्टम दे विच BCTF का कहना है कि सिस्टम दे विच टीचर्स ते असिस्टेंट टीचर्स की वडेरी मात्रा दे विच कमी है, जिस दे कारण एजुकेशन सिस्टम है जिहड़ा वो बड़ी बुरी तरह प्रभावित हो रहा है।
Video of a man riding Sea-Doo under BC Ferries vessel reported to RCMP. Illegal and extremely dangerous. That's what BC Ferries is calling a video posted online showing a man riding a Sea-Doo underneath the stern of one of its vessels. The video posted to Instagram shows the man almost touching the boat while riding the wake of the vessel. In an email, BC Ferries says it's taking the video seriously, regardless of the vessel involved operating a personal watercraft that close to a ferry is extremely dangerous and puts both the rider and others at serious risk, the ferry service said. We are reviewing the footage internally and have reported the incident to the Sunshine Coast RCMP, who are investigating. This type of behavior is illegal under federal marine safety regulations. In a separate video posted to a different Instagram account in October of 2024, the same man can be seen riding the wake of the same vessel further away from the hull. BC Ferry says safety is its top priority and is reminding all boaters and watercraft users to keep a safe distance and follow marine navigation rules at all times.
BC ਫੈਰੀ ਦੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਨਜ਼ਦੀਕ ਸੀਡੂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚਲਾਉਂਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਇੰਸਟਾਗ੍ਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਦੀ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ RCMP ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਕਾਨੂੰਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਤਹਿਤ ਪਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀਆਂ BC ਫੈਰੀਜ਼ ਤੋਂ ਦੂਰ ਰਹਿ ਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਬੋਟਸ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਜੰਤਰ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੂਰ ਰੱਖਣ ਦੇ ਆਦੇਸ਼ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਤੇ BC ਫੈਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫੈਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਖਤਰਨਾਕ ਸਾਬਤ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਹੁਣ ਇਸ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਦੀ ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਨਸ਼ਾਈਨ RCMP ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਇਹ ਸੇਮੀ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਦੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ 2024 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਵਰੇ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ BC ਫੈਰੀ ਤੋਂ ਥੋੜੀ ਦੂਰ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਸੀਡੂ ਚਲਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ।
Canada facilitating commercial flights home for citizens fleeing Israel, Iran, says Anand. The federal government will help Canadians in Israel and Iran to fly home once they reach neighboring countries, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand said Thursday. We are planning commercial options for Canadians in Israel and Iran to leave the region through certain neighboring jurisdictions, Anand told the Canadian press in an interview. With airports closed across the region, Ottawa has stationed consular officials on the other side of the certain crossings on the Israeli and Iranian borders to help those fleeing either country to get home. We've deployed additional consular services to aid Canadians who want to leave the region, she said. We are looking at additional options which include working with the allies. Canada has joined on allies in recent years to cooperate on everything from staging a military evacuation in Sudan to facilitating commercial evacuation flights out of Lebanon last year. Anand is urging Canadians in the region to register with Global Affairs Registration of Canadians Abroad database so that they can get the latest updates on ways to get home. I'm extremely concerned for all Canadians and will keep working on this file 24/7 to ensure their safety, Anand said. When asked whether she's calling on Canadians to leave the region immediately, Anand suggested otherwise. We are assisting departures for Canadians who wish to leave and we are here for you, she said. Canada this week urged its citizens to avoid all travel to Israel as the country exchanges missile attacks and airstrikes with Iran. Canada has advised against visiting Iran for years. Ottawa and most of its allies have repeatedly called for de-escalating while saying Israel has a right to defend itself. On June 13, Israel launched a surprise attack on Iran, which retaliated with missiles. The two countries have a history of trading small-scale attacks and acts of espionage and sabotage. Israel said it hit Iran last Friday because the country was on the verge of producing nuclear bomb. The International Atomic Energy Agency says it has no new evidence to prove this. U.S. Senator Mark Warner said American officials also said Iran was not pursuing nuclear weapons in a Monday briefing to the Intelligence Committee he vice chairs. For years, Israel has urged countries to call out Iran for supporting militant groups that attack Israel, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in the Palestinian territories. Prime Minister Mark Carney said during the spring election that Ottawa must be clear-eyed about Iranian sponsors in the region.
ਅੱਜ ਮੰਤਰਾਲਾ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਲੋਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਜ਼ਰਾਈਲ ਤੇ ਈਰਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਸੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਵਕਤ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਹਾਲਾਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਪਸ ਲਿਆਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਮਦਦ ਕਰਨਗੇ। ਔਰ ਮੰਤਰਾਲਾ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਅਨੀਤਾ ਆਨੰਦ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਰੂਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਲੋਕ ਜੋ ਮੁਲਕ ਨੂੰ ਜੋ ਈਰਾਨ ਤੇ ਇਜ਼ਰਾਈਲ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲ ਕੇ ਵਾਪਸ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਆਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਗੁਆਂਢੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਐਲਾਈਜ਼ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰਡਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਫਸੇ ਹੋਏ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਨੇ ਈਰਾਨ ਜਾਂ ਇਜ਼ਰਾਈਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਪਸ ਲਿਆਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵਚਨਬੱਧਤਾ ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਕਿ 13 ਜੂਨ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਇਜ਼ਰਾਈਲ ਤੇ ਈਰਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮਿਸਾਈਲਸ ਦੇ ਸਿੱਟਣ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਿਰਿਆ ਉਹ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਇਸੇ ਉਹ ਲੋਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਹਨ ਪਰ ਇਜ਼ਰਾਈਲ ਜਾਂ ਈਰਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਸੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੁਵਿਧਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰਦਾਨ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ।
BC NDP caucus says RCMP to investigate Rusted's claim of MLA blackmailers. The chair of British Columbia's NDP caucus has written to the RCMP requesting an investigation into allegations that former member of the opposition tried to blackmail ex-colleagues. The letter from Stephanie Higginson to Deputy Commissioner Dwayne MacDonald comes after BC Conservative leader John Rusted confirmed the authenticity of a letter to his caucus warning about the alleged blackmail by 3 MLAs and their staff. Higginson says in the open letter written on behalf of the NDP caucus that there is a significant public interest in determining the facts. She says if any MLA or the staff are engaged in blackmail, British Columbians deserve to know and perpetrators should be prosecuted. On Monday, Rusted confirmed the authenticity of the letter obtained by the Canadian press in which he tells his caucus that their former colleagues and staff were threatening to release blackmail materials, including secretly recorded phone conversations and text messages. Higginson says British Columbians deserve to know whether Rusted has any evidence to support his accusations. Given the accusations of criminal activity, it seems appropriate for police to examine any relevant information in Mr. Rusted's possession to determine if additional investigation and or criminal charges are necessary, Higginson says. Rusted has not named the former Conservative he is accusing, but Dallas Brody, who was ejected from the caucus in March, said in a statement on Monday that his letter consisted of wild lies about her new 1BC party, launched with fellow former Conservative Tara Armstrong last week. Brody was thrown out of the BC Conservatives over remarks about residential schools, prompting Armstrong and Jordan Kelly to quit the party in sympathy. Kelly has said he knows nothing about Rusted's allegations. NDP Premier David Eby had already said that the RCMP should be called in to look at Rusted's claim. Armstrong said on social media that Rusted and Eby can throw around the accusations all they like, but rest assured the truth will always prevail. Higginson's letter was copied to Rusted.
ABC ਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਧਾਨ ਸਭਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਜੌਨ ਰਸਟਡ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕੁਝ ਕੁ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਛੱਡ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਲੈਕਮੇਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਧਮਕੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਟਾਫ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਔਰ ਇਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚਰਚਾ ਤਾਂ ਛੇੜ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਪਰ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ BC NDP ਜਿਹੜੀ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਆ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਿ ਦਾਅਵਾ ਤੇ ਵਾਅਦਾ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਡੇਵਿਡ ਐਬੀ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਨੰਗਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਲਾਜ਼ਮੀ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਜੌਨ ਰਸਟਡ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਆ RCMP ਨੂੰ ਦੇਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਹੁਣ BC NDP ਪਾਰਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਕਰੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਿਰਿਆ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਚੰਗੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਤਾਰਾ ਉਹ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਉਧਰੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ 3 ਗਏ ਹੋਏ MLA ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੋ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਨੇ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਬਣਾਈ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਲੱਭਣਾ ਕੁਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਪਰ BC NDP ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਜੀ ਹੁਣ ਚੰਗੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮੰਗ ਮੂਹਰੇ ਲੈ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ।
Shots fired at Maple Ridge House for second time in weeks. The Rich Meadows RCMP is investigating after Maple Ridge home was hit with gunfire for the second time this year. On May 30th, Mounties say they responded to shots fired at the residence on 266th Street around 3 a.m. No injuries were reported. In a news release, the RCMP says it received reports of shots fired at the same address once again early Wednesday morning. Again, police say no injuries were reported. Both incidents are believed to be targeted and the investigations are ongoing. Rich Meadows RCMP recognizes the concern of local residents and is taking steps to ensure appropriate public measures are in place. Anyone with information about the incidents is asked to call the Rich Meadows RCMP at 604-463-6251.
ਰਿਚ ਮੀਡੋ RCMP ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਹੀ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਮੈਪਲ ਰਿਜ ਵਿਖੇ ਦੂਸਰੀ ਵਾਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਬੁੱਧਵਾਰ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੜਕਸਾਰ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਚਲਾਈਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ ਨੇ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮਈ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਸੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚਲਾਈਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ ਸਨ ਔਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਦੋਵੇਂ ਵਾਰੀ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਚੱਲਣ ਦੇ ਵਕਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਖਮੀ ਹੋਣ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖਬਰਸਾਰ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੈ। ਆਂਢ ਗੁਆਂਢ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਚਿੰਤਾ ਵੀ ਜਤਾਈ ਆ। RCMP ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਪਰ ਇਸ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ ਹੈ ਹੁਣ ਦੋਵੇਂ ਇਨਸੀਡੈਂਟਸ ਦੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੋਣ ਦੀ ਸੂਰਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ RCMP ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ।
Champagne says Canada won't pause digital services tax. Finance Minister Francis Philippe Champagne says Canada is going ahead with its digital services tax on big tech companies that is set to take effect on June 30th. Pressure has mounted on Ottawa to put the tax on hold ahead of trade discussions with the US.
ਅੱਜ ਮੰਤਰਾਲਾ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਕਿ ਟੈਕ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਲੱਗਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟੈਕਸ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਲੱਗੇਗਾ ਔਰ 30 ਤਰੀਕ ਦੀ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਤ ਡੇਟ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਉੱਠੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਟੈਕਸ ਨੂੰ ਮੁਲਤਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ। ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਹੈ ਗੁਆਂਢੀ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੋ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਹੋਣ ਤੱਕ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਲਡ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ। ਪਰ ਮੰਤਰਾਲਾ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਨੇ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟੈਕਸ ਹੈ ਇਹ 30 ਤਰੀਕ ਤੋਂ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗਾ।
Watchdog recommends up to 100% foreign airline ownership amid low competition. Canada should allow 100% foreign ownership of domestic-only airlines, the Competition Bureau says in a new report highlighting the country's highly concentrated aviation industry. In a market study released Thursday, the watchdog suggested creating a new class of airline that operates only in Canada but could have owners from outside its borders, opening the gate to global expertise and cash. The current foreign ownership cap sits 49%. In addition, no more than 25% of a carrier can be owned by any one foreign entity, a proportion of the Competition Bureau proposed raising to nearly half, allowing more foreign investment in Canada Airlines, improves access to capital, drives growth and promotes competition, the report said. Low competition in the airline industry remains a big hurdle to lower prices and better service across the country and remote communities especially, the report found. Competition in Canada's airline sector has struggled to take off, it said, noting consumers' dissatisfaction with fares, flights, options and service quality. Air Canada and WestJet together account for between half and three-quarters of all domestic passengers at major airports according to the study. Though competition improved between 2019 and 2023 with the arrival of Flair Airlines and the expansion of Porter Airlines, market concentration remains extremely high and the competition from the entrants fragile, the Bureau said, with the field dominated by a few large airlines. Many Canadians report that international flights are often cheaper than flights within Canada, it noted. The report recommended a basket of reforms that include shifting the financial burden of airport maintenance away from passengers, thus lowering ticket prices and allowing more consumers to book flights on the budget carriers, as well as expanding market access for new entrants by allowing secondary airports to compete with major hubs. Currently, flight exclusivity clauses often mean only one airport in a local area can host international flights. New entrants to the market face aggressive competitive responses, the study found. The report also called for an end to the transport minister's power to override mergers and acquisitions deemed anti-competitive under a federal review process. It also urged industry-wide publication of data on delays and cancellations to help consumers make informed choices on par with the United States and United Kingdom. It further stressed the unique challenges faced by remote communities and recommended a working group to ramp up service to the north, where air transportation is an essential lifeline, even for residents who never fly but whose food and medicine arrive by plane. New entrants face major barriers because existing carriers control critical assets at the major northern airports, the report said. It asked the government to tailor regulations to the northern context and weed out unnecessary costs. Over the past 20 months, 4 low-cost carriers have disappeared from the skies as Lynx Air and Canada Jetliners shut down and WestJet folded subsidiary Swoop and the recently acquired Sunwing Airlines into its main line service. While the country's biggest cities remain amply served, smaller ones have fewer options, which can also result in higher prices and, when things go awry, stranded passengers. The Calgary-Saskatoon route saw flights fall 39% to 412 last month from 673 in May of 2019. Now that the airspace between Alberta and Saskatchewan's 2 biggest cities is served with non-stop flights by WestJet only, Air Canada pulled out over 2 years ago, according to an aviation data firm Courier. Flight volumes between Ottawa and Fredericton decreased 23% in the same period of 89 trips after Air Canada exited the route, leaving Porter's as its sole carrier. Routes served by just one airline tend to be more expensive, the report noted. Our research shows that when just one new competitor flies on a route between 2 cities, airfares go down by 9% on average, the report said.
ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਵਾਈ ਯਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਾਲਾਤ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮੱਦੇਨਜ਼ਰ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ 에ਅਰਲਾਈਨਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਗਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਲਕੀਅਤ ਹੈ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਫੌਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਵੇ ਤਦ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਠੀਕ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਦੱਸੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿਛਲੇ 20 ਮਹੀਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 4 에ਅਰਲਾਈਨਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਛੋਟੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਬੋਰੀਆ ਬਿਸਤਰਾ ਗੋਲ ਕਰ ਗਈਆਂ। और कारण दसिया कि मेजर एयरलाइनस ने जिहड़ियां उन्हां दे हत्थ दे विच काफ़ी ज़्यादा वडेरी मात्रा दे विच कंट्रोल है। और इस दे सुझाव दे विच उन्होंने ये भी गल कीती कि एक सुजैशन रिपोर्ट दे विच ये भी दित्ती गई है कि एयरपोर्ट नूं मेनटेन करन दी जिहड़ी फीस है वो यात्रियों ते ना लगाई जावे। और नाल दी नाल एक शहर दे विच एक तो ज़्यादा जिहड़े एयरपोर्ट ने उन्हां दा होना। और जब आम पब्लिक का यह कहना है कि बहुतेरी दफा विदिन कैनेडा दे विच यात्रा करन दे लई ज़्यादा महंगी टिकट मिलती है विदेश यात्रा दे नालों। सो ये रिपोर्ट है जिहड़ी नशर की गई है, जिहदे विच कितने सारे सुजैशन ते नाल दी नाल सुझाव दिते गए ने।
Decades after Air India 182 bombing, families fear memories of tragedy are fading. Rob Alexandra's father wasn't supposed to be on Air India Flight 182 on June 23, 1985. My mother had actually booked him on an Air France flight to go see his mother in India, recalled Alexandra, who was in his teens at the time. One of the guys that we knew, he worked for Air India and he wanted to sell my father a ticket very badly to get the commission or something. Eventually, he agreed. Alexandra recalled the small argument that ensued between his father and mother and how she had to cancel his Air France ticket. An Ontario surgeon, Dr. Anjanat Matthew Alexandra, boarded the flight in Toronto on the evening of June 22nd. Early the next morning, about 200 kilometers off the Irish coast, a bomb exploded, sending the Boeing 747 plunging 31,000 feet into the ocean and killing all 329 passengers and crew. The majority were Canadians. About an hour earlier, two baggage handlers at Japan's Narita airport died when another bomb planted by the same group of terrorists exploded before it could be transferred to a different Air India flight. As the 40th anniversary of the tragedy looms, relatives of the victims fear the worst terror attack in Canadian history and its causes are being forgotten. A 2005 federal investigation report and a 2010 commission of inquiry concluded the conspiracy was rooted in radical sections of the Sikh community seeking an independent homeland in India known as Khalistan. But some victims' relatives say those issues have not been confronted in Canada. Remaining at the heart of Indo-Canadian relations, violence continues to swirl around the Khalistani separatist movement, including the 2023 assassination of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. It's really concerning that government has allowed these sort of influences to bubble up again and not take care of things, Alexandra said. It really makes Canada look like a bit of a laughingstock internationally. Two men, Ripudan Singh Malik and Ajab Singh Bagri, were acquitted in 2005 after a trial that cost almost $60 million and involved the construction of a high-security courtroom in Vancouver ringed by bulletproof glass. And Ajit Singh Rayad, the bomb maker and only person ever convicted in the case, pleaded guilty to manslaughter in 2003. He was later convicted of perjuring himself to protect his co-conspirators. The case is still not closed and remains under investigation, the RCMP said this week. In 2022, Malik was killed in BC by two hitmen who received life sentences. Their motives have never been revealed by police or prosecutors. Then in June 2023, Nijjar, a prominent Khalistan proponent, was shot dead outside his temple. Four men face murder charges in the case that triggered international uproar when former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of links to the killing, which New Delhi denied. Oakville, Ontario resident Deepak Khandewal lost two sisters on the Air India flight. He said Canada continues to see protests featuring images of guns and violence. He did not single out the Khalistani movement, but gun imagery has sometimes featured in the movement's Canadian protests. Unfortunately, a lot of the mistakes that were made in the whole 40 years seems to be repeating themselves, Khandewal said. We live in a very democratic society. I believe in free speech, but you can't go around demonstrating with violent images, with guns and murders. Chandrima Chakrabarti, professor at McMaster University who led the creation of the school's Air India Flight 182 Memorial Archive, said the tragedy involved the Sikh community as victims too. Yes, we can talk about Khalistanis, but let's also not forget that many people who were on that plane were Sikhs, Chakrabarti said. So it's not just that here we are a particular separatist group and Hindus were killed or Muslims were killed. They were people of all the regions there. They were peoples of all nations there. Vancouver's Khalsa Diwan Society, a prominent Sikh temple, is seeking the creation of a public learning center about the attack. Khalsa Diwan Society's General Secretary K.S. Dhaliwal in an email said the center should not just be a memorial but a place for healing, truth and education. This tragedy left a deep scar, especially because it was misrepresented or misunderstood for decades, he said. Most of the victims were from the Indo-Canadian community, many from Sikh backgrounds, and the attack was carried out by extremists who misused the Sikh identity for political goals. The broader Sikh community was not only devastated but also falsely associated with the perpetrators. Even today, many Sikh Canadians are still trying to reclaim the narrative and distance themselves from Khalistani extremism. The victims' loved ones and others are also upset about the lack of knowledge and understanding about the attack. Khandewal said none of his 3 children were taught in Canadian schools about the bombing. We've been ignored, said Khandewal. I know education is a provincial responsibility, but it should be in Canadian history. A 2023 Angus Reid poll of roughly 1,500 Canadians found 89% had little to no knowledge of the attack, and 58% of those younger than 35 never even heard of it. How many people have heard of 9/11? Chakrabarti asked. Why is it that so many Canadians join in public mourning and various memorial services, vigils, etc. around 9/11, but we don't see that kind of resonance when it comes to the 1985 Air India bombing, something that the public inquiry report has called a Canadian tragedy. She said Canadian authorities initially treated the bombing as a foreign tragedy, as foreigners who are importing their trouble, their animosities, their frustrations with their nations into our peaceful country, and it is their problem. She said this attitude has raised questions of national belongings. Dr. Bal Gupta, who lost his wife in the attack, organized victims' families afterwards, chairing the Air India 182 Victims Families Association out of necessity because of the lack of support from Canadian government. Gupta, 82, is worried no one will carry on these efforts. He said it's crucial Canadian governments dedicate more resources and education to the Air India bombing. Many of the Canadians, either they don't know about it, particularly the younger generation or those who heard about it, they consider it as a tragedy which did not concern Canadians, Gupta said. He decried a lack of official events to mark the 40th anniversary. On the 20th anniversary, then Prime Minister Paul Martin attended memorial events in Ireland and victims' families and designated June 23rd every year as a national day of remembrance for victims of terrorism. Khandewal said in lieu of official events, families have organized a number of memorial services to mark the anniversary in Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, and Ireland. He said both Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ontario Premier Doug Ford declined to attend. Ford told the Canadian press he had prior engagements. Carney's office has not responded to requests for comments. Khandewal said attending a memorial should be a simple and easy thing for political leaders to do. That's an insult again to myself and to the families, he said. In April 2023, the trial of Malik and Bagri began in Vancouver, with Riyadh having already pleaded guilty to manslaughter. Camille Baines, a former reporter, covered the trial for the Canadian press. It featured the highest level of courtroom security she had ever seen and media attention from around the world. But despite the historic scale of the proceedings, in which Malik and Bagri were charged with 331 counts of first-degree murder, she was struck by how few members of the public attended. It wasn't really resonating with a lot of the public, Baines said. I found that a little distressing. Malik and Bagri were ultimately acquitted in 2005 after a trial tainted by false testimony from Riyadh, whose perjury would earn him a further 9-year sentence. On top of this manslaughter sentences for the Air India and Narita bombings, he was freed in 2016. Robert Wright, the Crown's lead prosecutor in the case, declined to comment on the trials themselves, but said the proceedings were unprecedented, involving more than 1,300 witnesses from 9 countries. He said the passage of time gave the Canadian justice system an opportunity to reflect and implement lessons learned from a trial unlikely and we had previously experienced. Wright said the attack dramatically changed Canada's approach to airport and airplane security, along with increased awareness of possible terrorist activities. The victims' families are a wonderful, resilient group of people who continue to step forward to ensure the memory of this horrific event stays at the forefront of Canadian consciousness, he added. Dhaliwal with the Khalsa Diwan Society said the bombing motivated some in the community to reject extremism It made many of us more determined to speak out against extremism and to protect the true values of Sikhism, peace, service, and justice, he said. Still, tensions remain. A 2024 memorial for victims of the Air India bombing in Vancouver Stanley Park was attended by a group of supporting Khalistan separatism, standing in the background with the movement's blue and yellow flags. Some carried signs saying the mourning families deserve the truth and calling on Canada to investigate Indian diplomats' roles in the bombing. Neither the legal proceedings, the investigation report, nor the Commission of Inquiry found evidence of such a role. Instead, all pointed to a conspiracy among militant Sikh separatists. Social media videos showed some people angrily shouting at the group. Chakrabarti said a better public understanding of what happened in 1985 would help navigate recurring themes in the present. So often when we talk about particular kinds of extremism, we also turn that whole community into a monolith, she said. That is also worrisome because that is not the case. There is extremism within Hindu communities, there is extremism with Christian communities. It has to be an open conversation so that politicians can learn from families, from communities, but it has to be an open exchange of conversation. RCMP continue to investigate the bombing, said Sergeant Vanessa Mon. Should new information or different information that we have not received in 40 years emerge, we will investigate it to uncover the truth, she said.
एयर इंडिया की फ्लाइट जी कि 23 जून 1985 ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰੇ ਦੇ ਪੂਰੇ 329 ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਸਮਾਈ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮ੍ਰਿਤਕ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਕ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਖਦਸ਼ਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਮਾਂ ਪੈਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਯਾਦ ਆ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪੋ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਕਹਾਣੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਦੱਸੀਆਂ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੀਵਨ ਸਾਥੀ ਬੱਚੇ ਔਰ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਣ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਜੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਜਡੀ ਸੀ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਸੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਜਡੀ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਕਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਉਠਾਇਆ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਟ੍ਰੈਜਡੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਸਕੂਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂ ਵੈਸੇ ਵਿਦਿਅਕ ਅਦਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਰਜਿਸਟਰ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਔਰ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ 911 ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਗੁਆਂਢੀ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਜਡੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਤਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਅੱਧ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਲੋਕ ਸਨ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ 에ਅਰ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਬੌਂਬਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਟ੍ਰੈਜਡੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ। ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਪੀੜਤ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਬੰਬ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ 2 ਧਮਾਕੇ ਹੋਏ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੂਰੇ ਦੇ ਪੂਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਪਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਸਮਾਏ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਕਹਾਣੀਆਂ ਦੱਸੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਨ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਪਰ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਕ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਜਹਾਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗਏ ਤੇ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਰਤੇ ਹਨ ਔਰ ਮੈਮੋਰੀਅਲ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਈ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਮੈਮੋਰੀਅਲ ਬਣਾਏ ਗਏ ਨੇ ਪਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਝੁਕਾਅ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਨਤਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਐਜੂਕੇਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਣਹੋਂਦ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖੜਕਣਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਯਾਦ ਰਹੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਅਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਵੀ ਖੁੱਲੀ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦਾ ਮਹਿੰਗੇ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਮਹਿੰਗਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟ੍ਰਾਇਲ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਆਯੋਜਿਤ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਹੁਣ RCMP ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਾਸ 40 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੋਏ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਨਿਕਲਦੀ है तो इसनू दोबारा निगाहखोरी इस ते की जा सकती है।
इसी के साथ हमें दीजिएगा इजाजत। खबरों दा लेखा जोखा के इस सेगमेंट से साथ देने के लिए शुक्रिया। अंटिल नेक्स्ट टाइम, गुड बाय।